Hey guys, Mr. Tweet here to talk to you about the short run Phillips curve. So the short run Phillips curve is kind of an add-on for aggregate demand, aggregate supply. It doesn't really give us that much more information. In the last unit, I already showed you guys how unemployment is the opposite of output on our aggregate demand, aggregate supply model anyways. So this information is nothing that's really new. It's just kind of an add-on that shows this kind of interesting relationship that, macroeconomics, is still economics. It's still about trade-offs, and the primary trade-off that we have in macro is the trade-off between inflation and unemployment. And so we have a graph called the Phillips curve to kind of show this trade-off in the short run. So y-axis is inflation, basically the same thing as price level from aggregate demand, aggregate supply. That's going to be important in the next section. And then unemployment down here, again, the opposite of output. That's going to be important in the next section as well. So I've got my inflation and unemployment. And then on my Phillips curve, because there's no other line, there's no intersection point. So we just label the current, wherever the current economy is, or whatever we're looking at, the current point, we just label it. So usually with A is the first one, and then if it moves, B would be the next. Where that point is on our axes, for the inflation side, we use pi as the abbreviation for inflation. The reason why is because the letter I is already used for interest rates, so we can't use the letter I for inflation, so we use pi for inflation, just to stand in there. And then we have the letter U for unemployment. And then, on this graph, if we have a change, we can show the effect of that change here. So there's no new shifters that you really need to know, because it's just a change in aggregate demand, aggregate supply, is going to lead to a change on our Phillips curve. So when aggregate demand shifts, it causes price level and output to do the same thing, which means it causes price level and unemployment to do opposite things. So if aggregate demand goes up, price level is going to go up, output goes up, unemployment goes down, right? So again, if aggregate demand goes up, then price level goes up, output goes up, unemployment goes down. This is all stuff that you can see for yourself, sketching it out on an aggregate demand, aggregate supply graph. So if price level's going up, that means inflation's going up, and if unemployment's going down, right, we've already got unemployment here, so we would say unemployment going down, right, so maybe now here, price level is going up, so maybe to here, and we would find, right, our new intersection point is still on our curve. So when aggregate demand shifts, we get a move on the Phillips curve. And in the real world, when economists looked at this data over periods of time, they saw that when they plotted at any given moment in the economy, what's the unemployment rate, what's the inflation rate, they plotted it over a series of years, and they had a really strong relationship, right? So this line was like, it's not just kind of a theoretical thing, but empirically we can actually calculate this and find it. And there's a really strong relationship there that shows this trade-off. Now, in the 1970s, something crazy happened. We had stagflation. It was something that hadn't been experienced before. With stagflation, that happens when you have a supply shock that decreases your short-run aggregate supply. So when short-run aggregate supply goes down, we had a new thing happen. If short-run aggregate supply decreases, well, price level goes up, output goes down, unemployment goes up when we have a decrease to our short-run aggregate supply. So if we started off back at point A here, right, and if we said, all right, price level goes up, so that means we're going to be here, and then we said unemployment goes up, that means we're moving out. So now where these 2 points intersect is way out here in space. It's not on our curve. So what that means is our curve is going to have to shift to meet it. So what we see on the short-run Phillips curve is that when we do have a supply shock, whether it's positive or negative, a positive supply shock would be like a temporary increase in resources. A negative supply shock would be some event that temporarily takes away resources. So when we have that supply shock, it causes our short-run Phillips curve to shift. When short-run aggregate supply goes down, the short-run Phillips curve shifts out. when the short run aggregate supply goes up, my short run Phillips curve is going to shift in. So basically, there's no new shifters on this graph. It's an add-on for aggregate demand, aggregate supply. Aggregate demand is going to be a mover. Aggregate supply is going to be a shifter. In the next section, I'll show you kind of, a way to make this even easier, more memorable. See you then.